Hi, everybody. I'm Daria. This story happened because of my naivety. I thought I was smarter and prettier than everyone else, but I almost ended up in real slavery. I always knew I was different. Even strangers, neighbors, or just passers-by told my mom what a beautiful daughter she had. I had fancy curls, a sweet smile, and big blue eyes. Everyone loved me. Everyone except my mom. When I turned 15, I clearly realized me and my mom's relationship was different from the one girls usually have with their mothers. My friends told me some fantastic stories about being friends with their moms. All this communication, advice. But my mom? Well, things used to be totally different with me and her. My mom was proud of me. She said I was like the best version of herself. My photos were everywhere in our house. My mom even took me to various kids' modeling agency castings. I starred in a couple of commercials and became a little famous. Everyone promised me a great future. But the older I got, the worse my mom behaved. It all started with the fact that my photographer, he wasn't my personal photographer. He was just the guy who shot me for a kid's cosmetic commercial. Anyway, he started complimenting me and promised me a great future. My mom suddenly got very angry. I was even afraid I would miss a successful advertising contract. After the photographer, there was the agency's producer. He offered me an absolutely wonderful contract. He behaved nicely, and he constantly invited me to discuss the details in his office. At 14, I already knew about the birds and bees. We had sex education at school. My mom told me what boys really want from girls at this age. And frankly, I liked that grown men told me I was beautiful. I thought I was a real star. But my mom didn't like it at all. So she broke her contract with the agency and forbade me to approach their office. But then I thought my mom was just trying to protect me. It's okay for a mom to protect her kid, right? But the older I got, the more guys paid attention to me. Among them were guys my age, and even some adult men. The second thing was the best for me. Probably any girl would like adult men looking at her and giving her compliments. But it turned out to be a real nightmare. The more guys liked me, the angrier my mom got. She started to forbid me literally everything. No cosmetics, no makeup, and even acne cream was questionable. No fancy clothes, especially skirts above the knee or an unbuttoned blouse. No high heels. Even if I bought some, I immediately tried to hide them. No hanging out with friends. No cute boys walking me home from school. No staying for extra classes with a teacher. I guess it's better for me to say what my yeses were. Yes, you can just sit and be silent, and preferably wrapped up in lousy rags. And when my mom had a man in her life, she started acting crazy. She really locked me up in my room while she was hanging out with her dreamboat. I just couldn't figure it out. Why? Like, what did I do to deserve this mad attitude? Just because I was more beautiful than her? In fact, it was a one and only explanation for her actions. She was just jealous of a more beautiful girl who was younger and more popular with guys. Sooner or later, some disaster would happen. Either me or my mom would go crazy, and I wouldn't be surprised if she sent me to some boarding school located somewhere at the end of the world. But things turned out to be a little different. I've learned to lie. Yes, I've never lied to my mom before, I swear. But what could I do with all these freaking no's? I thought if I lie a little, that wouldn't kill anyone, right? So I asked a friend of mine who lived near our place to give me a hand. I left some of my clothes at her place. I went to school, dressed up the way my mom wanted. I looked modest and gray, but I didn't get on the school bus right away. I rushed to my friend instead. I quickly changed my clothes, did some makeup, smoothed my rumpled feathers, and I proudly walked out to the school bus. I was wearing a miniskirt, a beautiful t-shirt, and fancy makeup. Don't get me wrong, I didn't have a clown face. I did it all cute, just enough to emphasize my natural beauty. My friend's parents helped me, or rather, they just didn't interfere. And they didn't give me up to my mom. They couldn't get her either. They couldn't get why she forbade me to grow up in a normal way, like other girls usually do. Look for your own style and stuff. I did the same thing after classes and vice versa. I went to my friend's place, changed my clothes, washed away the makeup, and came home again, looking like a gray mouse. Besides, if I had some extra classes with teachers, I always said the teacher was a woman. My mom bought it. She knew I never lied. And she didn't even think she had taught me how to do it herself. And one day, Anthony came into my life. We met in the park. I was there with my friends for someone's birthday party. My mom simply couldn't make me miss this party. Other parents would never understand or think she was cuckoo. She already started having such a reputation as gossip travels fast, and some of our neighbors and my classmates' parents started whispering about a girl who had to change clothes at her friend's house because her mom forbade her daughter to look beautiful. Well, I agreed. Okay, we were having fun, chatting and eating ice cream in an outdoor summer cafe, when suddenly, a handsome adult man came up to us and asked my name. I smiled and told him my name, and we somehow slipped away from the crowd under the envious glances of my friends. So we started talking. Anthony turned out to be a fairly rich businessman. He was looking for talented and beautiful girls to work as models. He asked me if I'd ever had this experience, and when I told him I worked with one agency and even starred in a couple of commercials as a kid, he was totally delighted. We exchanged contact info. He promised to call me later. I didn't tell my mom because she would have forbidden me to see him anyway. So why should I expose myself? Anthony and I met a couple more times. It looked as if it was by chance. I met him at the mall, or I saw his car next to my school. Of course, he stopped to talk to me for a chat every time. And once, in another phone conversation, he admitted he fell in love with me. Anthony honestly said that he didn't want it because I was still a teenage girl. But you can't tell your heart what to do, can you? He promised he would never hurt me, but if I didn't mind, he just liked to date me and take care of me. How could I refuse? I couldn't resist. Of course I agreed, especially since I also liked him very much. And then my own fairy tale started. Anthony turned out to be a fantastic guy. He was smart, funny, so interesting, and he beautifully courted me. We went shopping, where he bought me everything I wanted. He took me to some beautiful and expensive cafes and restaurants. He drove me around the city in an expensive car. And somehow, I didn't care that he was 40. He was old enough to be my dad. Moreover, Anthony kept his promise. There were never any indecent hints from him, just some hugs a couple of times. Quite nice and delicate. Anyway, he was a perfect man who found his princess. By the way, he often called me princess. He said he liked to spoil me. I was so sincerely happy about any little thing. And he would like to take me to some place where the two of us would be together and never let me go. I was so pleased to hear that. But I was afraid all the time. The city was small, and my mom could just happen to see us together. Or some of our mutual acquaintances would definitely tell my mom. In this case, I would have been in serious trouble. But most important, my mom would definitely do her best so that me and Anthony would never see each other again. And I really didn't want that to happen. I told Anthony about it, and he came up with a plan. He gave me a new secret phone. He told me to hide it so well that no one would find it. In this case, we would always have a way to secretly contact each other. So I took the phone and hid it very well, in a secret place in my room which no one knew about. As it turned out, it was very helpful to us. I don't know how it all happened. I suspect one of my friends just blabbed everything to my mom, but my mom said she knew about Anthony and me. Not because she heard it from someone, but because she personally saw us together with her own eyes, so to speak. It also made me think someone I knew well turned us in, because my mom knew exactly the place where we had a date that day. The punishment followed immediately. My mom took away all my gadgets, my phone, my tablet, and even my laptop. She locked me up in my room to think about my bad behavior. I broke down and cried. I thought she'd let me out to go to school at least. No, she literally locked me up. My mom brought me food 3 times a day. She gave me textbooks and asked my classmates about homework. It turned out later, she told the teachers that I was very sick. She even bought a fake certificate from a friend of hers who worked as a doctor. A week later, I realized I couldn't stand it anymore. And that's where my secret phone from Anthony came in handy. My mom could never find my hiding place, though she searched my room a couple of times. So I waited until nightfall and called my boyfriend. He was horrified by what my mom had done to me and suggested I run away. To do this, I had to pretend to be remorseful. I needed to play a good girl for a couple of days. Then come to the school parking lot at the appointed time. Anthony would wait for me there and take me away from my terrible mom. I did what he said. The most incredible thing was that my mom believed me again. She released me, even apologized for such cruel measures. And things were the same again. And me, well, I didn't even change my clothes for school on purpose. And I kept walking around looking like a gray mouse, just in case my mom decided to follow me and check up on me. Meanwhile, I was quietly preparing an escape. I withdrew money from my personal bank account. I packed all my valuables in my backpack and waited for the call. Anthony called 3 days later and said everything was ready for my escape. As we agreed, I would go straight to the school parking lot. and we would leave for a beautiful and bright future without my mom and her strict guardianship. But we got unlucky again. Seriously, as if the universe itself was against our love. Now I understand that the universe was right, but then, oh, how mad I was. I was about to get into the car. I was almost slamming the passenger door when all of a sudden, the car was literally hit by my mom, who appeared from nowhere. She brought some other people. I guess they were cops or something. I can't say for sure, but I definitely saw one of them wearing a uniform. Anthony was handcuffed and taken somewhere. I shouted I loved him and we could handle it somehow, but no one listened to me. At the same time, while the cops were reading Anthony his rights, my mom pushed me into her car, and then my mom took me to some old godforsaken farm. It was like a small house in the middle of nowhere, right in the woods. There was no internet there. There wasn't even a mobile connection there. And I'm sure there were deer somewhere running between the trees. My mom left me with an old, deaf, terrible-looking old lady. My mom left straight away without even explaining anything or talking to me at all. And I stayed. No communication, no car. Well, at least there was some food in that antediluvian refrigerator. And this lady, I don't know what kind of super hearing she had, but when I tried to walk out of the door without her permission, she would immediately jump out of her eternal place, a rocking chair in the corner of the room, and close the door. Or her crooked walking stick would fly at my head. It was a nightmare. I thought it was a nightmare before, a week in my room locked up, but I was wrong. At least, I had a normal toilet there and bath, and here, instead of accommodations, there was just a pit in the ground, and some terrible rusty tank with dirty water. Anyway, this was the end. The darkness and the horror. I tried to escape. Of course I did. I had to save Anthony. I was sure he would go to jail because I was only 15. A minor and a grown man in the same car? Who in the world would believe there was nothing between us? Besides, knowing my mom and her endless envy, I had a boyfriend who was rich and handsome, and she had no one. She had broken up with her boyfriend. I could surely say she would do her best to put Anthony behind bars. Obviously, no one was going to interrogate me. Everyone believed at once it was a murky case. So my mom acted as my official representative in court, and she told everything. About the escape, my first attempt showed I had nowhere to run. There was just a forest around, and a small dirty road through this forest to the house. I went along the road, but it never ended. Finally, it led me to a house that looked even more terrible than my temporary prison. The local guy was drunk. He looked like a maniac from a horror movie. He didn't even listen to me. He took me by the hand and led me into the woods. Honestly, I peed myself out of fear, and I promised myself I would never run away again. I just prayed that creepy dude would bring me back to the old lady. And then my mom came back, and I got a chance to tell her everything I wanted to say. I yelled so loud, if there were any wild animals in this forest at that moment, they would definitely run away. My mom silently threw a newspaper in my face. Anthony was there, looking at me from the front page headline. There were some big letters under his photo. The police arrested a man who sold teenage girls as sex slaves. When my first shock had passed, my mom told me her version of the story. She learned about my relationship with Anthony not from my friends, but from a policeman she knew. It turned out the FBI had been watching Anthony for a long time. He was constantly followed and electronically surveyed by the feds. They had information that a lot of girls he talked to online just later disappeared, and I was about to become his next victim. When my boyfriend promised to help me escape from my mom, he didn't lie. He just didn't specify he was arranging everything to sell me to another country. From my mom's surveillance, I would end up in slavery, so to speak. And the police didn't interrogate me simply because they didn't need to. They had more than enough evidence against Anthony, if that was his real name. Photos, videos, contacts, messages. Anyway, if the police delayed his arrest a little longer, I would have already joined someone's harem, or, well, I don't know what they do with the young girls I sold. Then, I had a heart-to-heart talk with my mom. By the way, she laughed when I said she envied me. Of course she didn't. It was her desire to protect a young, naive fool who didn't think outside of the box. However, she apologized for her stupid behavior, and I promised to think twice before talking to any adult men next time. Well, that's the happy ending of my story. I improved my relationship with my mom. I learned to think with my head, and I realized that no adult and reasonable man would ever try to date a 15-year-old girl. And girls, I advise you, listen to your moms, even if you think sometimes they act stupid. Write in the comments what you think of my story. Don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to the channel to stay tuned. Watch the next stories coming up. Bye-bye and take care.